Hello and welcome to Analysing Avatar The Last Airbender. This week we'll be taking a look at the episode The Great Divide. But I just want, for some context first, to let you people know, the lovely people listening to this podcast, you are currently listening to a man in the middle of a breakdown. Like an actual, full-on, losing my mind breakdown. Brief context. Had a weird night, didn't get a lot of sleep. Just in a bad place, feeling low, decided I know what I'll do. I'll get something done in the house that I've been meaning to do for weeks and weeks and weeks. Just a little job, half an hour it should take, and then I'll feel like I've achieved something with my day. Yeah?
Yeah.
So this is a man on no sleep thinking, let me get a victory. Let me get the W. Let me get one W. Yeah? Not a lot to ask. So a few months ago, I noticed that where I'm doing my dishes, the bit behind this where the sink is was starting to bow slightly, and it's left a gap between the skirting board, the sort of I say skirting board, it's not a skirting board, it's high up, the wood panelling that's under the window, and the thing is creating a gap, basically, where water from when I'm doing the dishes is splashing into a void space. Now, I don't know much, Chris, but I know that is a problem. That is a quick way to get pests. You get a damp area in your house that's out of sight, you got wood lice in a minute, mate, or silverfish, or earwigs, or something else, right? So I'm thinking, I'm going to sort that out. So at the time, when I first noticed it, went out, bought myself, I went out, I ordered it online because I'm a child, some cork, just to cork it up.
Cork it up.
Simple job.
Did you consider, because we had that with our bath and resealed it with some sealant, did you consider sealant or did you go straight to cork?
Well, straight to cork, because it's a big gap. It's not a small gap. I didn't think sealant would quite do it. I mean, it's a similar job though, similar task.
Yeah.
So I get the cork, and I get the cork.
Hey, mate, you don't worry, mate. I called him my dad, so you're already doing better at life points than me. Well, no, to be fair, I called my dad to ask if he had any sealant, and Dad was like, no, and I was like, okay, I'll buy some.
After this, can you arrange it so your dad comes around here and fixes the disaster I've just done? So what happened was,
just very good, because this is the way he did it was he went, no, but you need the gun to properly seal it. And I was like, okay. He was like, I've got the gun. I was like, oh, can we borrow it? And he just went, I'll do it. I was like,
that is cork then. I mean, that sounds like cork.
That wasn't cork. It's like a bath sealant thing.
Like a white.
I was like cork then. I'm picturing cork that you get in the top of a bottle of wine.
No, you wino. No, cork. That is cork. That white sort of
then yes,
plastery stuff that seals in.
Yeah, that's cool.
Simple job.
I thought you were buying literally cork, as in the
No.
I admit, mate, I thought it was weird, but I didn't want to press too much. Anyway, go on.
So I get it, and then I do the typical thing of it. By the time it arrives, all my gusto for getting that fixed was gone, and I was writing, or I was busy, or back at work, or whatever. It just sort of the cork gun and cork sat in a cupboard for about 4 weeks, right? So that happens. And then, obviously, very little sleep. Just to have weird, sort of tossy-turny night anyway. Just I don't know, the world was already on top of me, and then one tiny, stupid, insignificant thing just made me kind of snap. So I was already not in a good place. So I was like, win. I'll get this one win. It was an hour and a half ago, Chris, and I knew we had this podcast recording at 3. So at about 1:30, I go, I'll get that corking done. And then I'll do the podcast. And I'll feel like I've accomplished so much today. I did the research for the podcast this morning, watched the episode, made my notes, checked the triv and all that stuff. I'll have done this cork between, then I've recorded the podcast, and I'll feel like I've had a real, the day meant something. Yeah? Not a loss. I'll have a W. Mate, no one should have let me use cork anywhere. I've been scraping cork off places I didn't know I got it. I don't understand. Yeah, we need your dad here to do... to fix the disaster I have just caused. And literally, you were calling me, and I was still while we've been on this call, Chris, I was scraping cork off the skirting thing around the edge. Oh man!
So what do you think you did wrong then?
I think, Chris, I misjudged the size of the gap. I think the gap was maybe even wider than cork would do.
Oh, so you think cork is down in the gap now?
Yeah, which is fine because it's just dead space. It doesn't matter. It just sort of hardens into a sort of a plastic cube. But it's all the places I've gotten it that are visible that it shouldn't be that I'm scraping it up before it sets. Trying to make it look neat.
Is it all removed? Do you need more time?
I mean, I got as much up as I can now. I think when it dries, I'll be able to peel off a lot of it. Like, it was, yeah. We also needed some caulk doing in the bathroom, and I did that after I sorted out the kitchen, and that went fine. So evidently, it was just a bit of practice I needed, and I'm just annoyed that I've done it here in, what essentially equates to a rental, because there's a chance I may pay for that at a later date.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm a man in the middle of a breakdown. Honestly, the kitchen has been completely pulled apart, so I didn't want anything to get any like dishes or like things in the cupboard underneath to get anything on them. So they're all out everywhere. The toolboxes are out everywhere because I was trying to find something to scrape it up with in a panic. Like, I'm looking in this living room right now, and it looks like a madman lives here. It's quite something.
It looks
so with that in mind, Chris,
does it look like the opening pan from like an episode of Jonathan Creek? Like,
yeah.
You're the person that would be the suspect.
Yeah. It's a house. The cupboard is open but completely empty for some reason. There's like a cork gun just strewn about on the side. Cork everywhere. All these dishes on the counter pans that you presumably used to belong in the cupboard. Then just toolboxes all open, and then you pan along, and it's just a guy doing a podcast. So yeah, I just want my frame of mind on record, so that if anything I do or say or any weirdness in today's podcast, I'm covered. I like people know I'm a man having a mild breakdown, and I think that's fine. I'm allowed. I feel like, I tell you what clip encapsulates where I'm at right now. Have you ever seen the clip online of James Acaster on Bake Off?
Yeah, I love that, and I really am annoyed because he had an actual breakdown, and that's what his last stand-up show was about. Sorry, my mic keeps coming up with battery, even though it's plugged in. That's
worrying.
Okay, yeah, no, let me try and fix that. But yes, I've seen the clip. Yeah, it's an awesome clip. And he did a whole show about it, and I want the show to come to Netflix, but it doesn't seem to be, even though it was filmed. Anyway, carry on.
So yeah, it basically at the end of the clip, he just goes, did some baking, had a breakdown, bon appetit. And that's where I'm at now. I'm just... Anyone who can find... Oh, no, it started raining, and I think I've left the window open because of the smart. I'm going to have to go do that because I've got to go shut the window. Oh, dear Lord.
Oh.
Right, I'm off. I'm not even on mic now.
I swear, didn't last episode we go... Right, we've done it now. We'll probably start getting a bit looser and a bit... and like we are 7 minutes in.
Yeah, okay.
I'm
back. Okay, let's do an Avatar podcast. So, for a change,
well, with that frame of mind, is this the episode you don't like?
Yes. Did you figure that out by watching it and also not liking it?
I was up and down on it, but let's recap it and then we'll go there.
Yeah, so this is The Great Divide. This is the episode, although I'm sure it needs no introduction, where Aang and the gang, probably made that joke last week too, the gang, are heading, they want to head across a Great Divide thing. It's like a chasm, it's like a Grand Canyon thing, and there are two groups, the Ganjin and the Zhang, and they don't like each other. They think the other group's too prissy, and the other they think they're too messy or whatever, and they don't get on. It turns out they've got some deep historical hatred for each other because of this thing that happened between Jin Wei and Wei Jin 100 years ago. Aang's like, I'm the Avatar, I'll be the peacemaker. Actually, no, we'll come to it, but Katara proper throws him under the bus. We'll talk about that. And then basically they go down into this cavern. They get stuck because they all bring food when they were told not to, which gets their guide hurt. And then they have to sort of come together to get out. And then basically how it ends is Aang solves 100-year rivalry by lying, and it's completely void of point, and nothing is resolved. And I feel frustrated for having to have watched it. It's my least favourite episode for a number of reasons. I think it's funny because often it gets credited as being a least favourite episode for its inconsequentiality. Like, it's just inconsequential. That's like the reason a lot of people give, and that is true. But I don't think inconsequential is necessarily a remit for bad episode. There are plenty of inconsequential episodes of Steven Universe that are great, and there are even some less consequential episodes of this show that are also excellent, like excel. So, what's this episode's excuse? It's got a bunch of problems, which we'll get to. But I'm very curious, Chris. How did you feel about the episode?
Well, like, I'll start watching it, and I'm like, doesn't really feel like anything's happening here. And then,
Yes.
and then I was like, you know what? It's Planet of the Ood. Planet of the Ood is season 4 is my favourite series of Doctor Who. Planet of the Ood is an episode that I'm like, yeah, it's fine. I have nothing to say about Planet of the Ood. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, I think The Unicorn and the Wasp is a good example of what you're talking about. It's inconsequential, but it's a damn good episode. Like, you know. But Planet of the Ood is just like, cool. And I'm like, in my head, I'm kind of going, the problem here is like, those sort of episodes are the hardest to review in a way, because it's just like, yeah, fine. Like, it's hard to muster the energy to talk about something for 45 minutes to an hour when it's just like, yeah, cool, whatever. But I'm watching it, and there are moments of entertainment, and I will say this episode to me has a big redeeming feature, which is the animation of like the flashbacks and Aang when he's hungry. Like, I thought that was some really cool animation styles. Like, it was just a bit different and stuff, and so there's that, and then I'm like, this is, like you say, it's just like a story of the week episode. That's cool, that's fine, that's allowed. And then he tells the story of why it's fighting, and we see them as babies. And I thought that was fucking amazing. I thought that was such a funny idea. The notion that these two groups of people had, what would you call them? Are they tribes? Are they? Yeah.
Yeah, I think they call them tribes right up front. Refugee tribes, I think, is the words they use. But yeah, so it's the Gunjin, which had Jin Wei as their guy, and the Zhang, who had Wei Jin as their sort of like he was an old leader of theirs. I say leader, actually. They don't actually specify that, do they? Just two old tribesmen from 100 years ago that set off this 100-year bitterness between these two tribes.
Yeah. That, I'll be honest, that flashback is potentially the most I've laughed at this show yet. I thought that was fucking hysterical. That entertained me so much, and I was like, this episode's just got up a fair few notches. And then when it's revealed that it's a lie,
yes,
I was like, oh, I suppose it's clever to some degree, and it's a bit cheeky, but I'll be honest, I felt a bit flat after it became apparent it was a lie. And even before that, I wonder if this is the episode that Dan doesn't like, because there's a fairly cool action sequence when the beetle things attack. And
do you think?
Yes,
because I'm not even sure I like the action sequences in this episode.
But it's nothing compared.
The solution's mildly clever, but the actual action is pretty flat.
Yeah, it's nothing compared to what we've had. No, and it just didn't really feel like anything was happening. Like I say, I will stand up for the variety in animation in the flashbacks. I thought that was brilliant, and even like I say, when Aang's hungry and like his eyes are popping out and stuff, I thought that was some really cool animation. And I loved the notion. So are you with me then? If it had been true, would your entire opinion on this episode be different?
Maybe not entire, because I still think the episode is kind of like not particularly funny until that moment. There's two moments in this episode that are laugh worthy, which is, one is the one you've already pointed out. The other is when Sokka says, "I only took their side because they fed me," which is just a great line. Like that's funny. Other than that, though, I didn't find anything else in the episode. God,
sorry, I was taking a drink and then I got excited because this is a point I wanted to make. Sokka's the difference between Katara and Sokka being told the stories was phenomenal, and what I loved is they really stuck with Sokka. They didn't even cut back to him looking annoyed. Even when they cut back after the story, he was still just eating and didn't seem arsed. And like, I loved that. I thought the juxtaposition between those two, because I was expecting, Sokka's going to rally behind them, Katara's going to rally behind them, and they're just going to fall out, which they did a little bit. But like, to not get Sokka annoyed about it and to just have him be hungry, I did think that was very entertaining as well.
Yeah, I guess you're right. The episode isn't without its redeeming qualities. I think maybe it was even Bianca on our Discord yesterday, because I said we were recording this one, because it is now, people now know we're recording these, which is nice. So it means I can actually talk about it. People were asking where we were up to, and I was explaining we were about to record this one. And
are people excited? Can I just ask?
Oh yeah, very excited, very excited. There's a lot. I'm seeing a lot of love and a lot of. I mean, it's excitement we can't match with a podcast, but we'll we'll definitely give it a go.
Certainly not this week.
it became clear that a lot of people don't care for this episode, but also there's also a fair few defenders of this episode too. But yeah, but I think somebody basically said the problem is with this episode. I've just found the quote. In a show star-studded with 9s and 10s, episode after episode, the 7 sticks out. And I think that might be a really good way to frame it, because you've just pointed out some things about this episode that I do think are good about it. I do like Sokka's reaction to it. I do like that gag with him at the end. I like the reveal of what was really going on with Jinwei and Wei Jin. The problem is they then immediately undercut it, and not only undercut it, but undercut the entire point of the episode. Because so the plot of the episode is about Aang learning to be a peacemaker, right? And in the end, the way he made peace was by lying. He didn't actually learn anything. He cheated his way out of it, and that's just not satisfying from a narrative perspective.
Well, it doesn't feel
of the episode.
It doesn't feel in keeping with the show either.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't feel in keeping with Aang. Like, I find it hard to believe Aang would choose to lie in that situation. I understand the way they played it, and I'm sure this is what the comments will say on this video, that, you know, it's clear in this episode he becomes very frustrated by their constant bickering. You know, and I agree that is what they imply, that he is extremely like at his wit's end with it. But I don't think that excuses him sort of acting so out of character, because lying as a solution does feel out of character here in this context, and I think it undercuts the premise of the episode, the initial conceit. I mean, the episode starts with Aang being like, "I am the, I'm the Avatar. I've not learned all my, all my Avatar ways yet, but my job is to be peacemaker, and I'm going to learn to be peacemaker." And then let's talk about Katara. Those guys are arguing, and Katara's like, "Aang, want to put your peacemaking skills to the test?" And he's like, "Oh, well, this is more serious than disagreement over chores." And she's like, yeah, everybody. Aang's going to fix this? And he's just, like, stood there.
Not only that, it's quite a dangerous thing to be telling people he's the Avatar, isn't it? Like, she tells him really freely, and they, for the first time in the show's history, don't give a shit.
Like, couldn't give a fuck.
Like, I was really taken aback by how little they cared that he was the Avatar.
It was kind of amazing, wasn't it?
There you go, because this is a separate point. No, keep ranting about this. I'm enjoying it.
I mean, I just think the whole premise of like the episode, it feels like this episode forgot what the rest of the show was. Like it just feels like this episode was written way more in isolation, and things like them not reacting to the fact he's the Avatar, Aang sort of being a little bit out of character, not having any consequence to anything before or after it, to the point where, and I'll skip a little bit to a piece of trivia now, but it's just because it labours my point. This is the first of 5 episodes in the series to never be seen again on a previously on Avatar clip.
Oh, wow.
So in the whole run of the show, only 5 episodes were so inconsequential that they never reappeared in any form in a previously on clip. What's funny about that is I'm looking at the list of the other episodes that fall into that, and there are some fucking brilliant ones in there. One of my favourites is in that list. And it's like, there's proof of episodes that have no overall show impact, but actually can do a good job of being a really great episode.
Yeah, well, not to labour the point on Doctor Who too much, but Midnight is one of the best episodes the show ever did, and that, as far as I can remember, doesn't have any consequence or
Correct.
On anything else. You could if Moffat hadn't brought Blink back, hadn't brought back the Weeping Angels, you'd be able to say the same thing about Blink. And that's amazing, Yeah.
So I'm sorry to anyone who listens to this who doesn't know Doctor Who, because I had some deep cut references to Doctor Who on this podcast. But the premise, but what you're saying, I think, is clear, and it's the point you're making is absolutely valid, which is it is totally possible to like do this and do it well, and even if it doesn't have any consequence on the story, tell us something about the characters, because that has impact on other stuff. The more we learn about these people, the more we care about what they're going through in later episodes, right? Like that's your setup here. So when you don't successfully tell me anything about the characters in the episode, then it really does feel wasted. Because that's the one thing I will say about the Steven Universe, and in quote marks here, because I don't like this word, but the filler episodes, as a lot of people describe them, and we talked about this a lot when we looked at the that alternate viewing you could do of Steven Universe that was a bit quicker to the point. I think you lose out on a lot of like the towny episodes that really invest you in the place and the people. And therefore, those episodes, while they may not serve a plot relevance, they serve character and setting relevance and set up stuff that will make you more invested in what comes later. So that flood order is kind of well thought out and very well put together, but in its conceit is, to me, flawed, because I think you should watch it all. But the reason that's the case is because those episodes do add something to the overall content of that show. Whereas if you took the Great Divide out of season 1 of Avatar: The Last Airbender, you would not notice. You absolutely wouldn't notice a thing.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's and I would say if the quality was there, I would even forgive that. If I went, yeah, but it's a brilliant episode. Like, it's flawless, it's funny, the action's great, it's got this really funny bit at the end, like, you know, all of the animation, like, if all that's there, then it doesn't even matter that it's inconsequential.
Yeah, I'll be honest.
As proven by the Doctor Who episode example you gave.
If it wasn't undercut by the lie, I'll be honest, I'd be defending this episode, because for me, the animation was cool enough, and the laugh was so, the notion of them being kids and the way that was revealed would have been enough to carry it for me, because I'd have just been like, yeah, it doesn't play a part in the wider mythology, but we've had some pretty heavy mythology episodes recently. That's cool. That doesn't really matter. Not a problem. It's the element of it where, because and those two things would have made me forgive feeling, to be honest, a little bit bored at the beginning of the episode. But it's quite hard to forgive the out of characterness of the lie, how flat it, because it just suddenly, the joke didn't work. Because afterwards I was like, well, am I being too harsh? Because the joke still, does the joke still work? And I'm like, I don't think it does, because it undercuts the joke. Because the joke isn't it madness that this has happened based on something so silly? But it's not based on something so silly because Aang was lying. And you kind of go, well, what did actually happen? And I think, because also, it's quite, the other thing is, it undercuts potentially a message the episode could have had. Because, you know, they've done a lot of really good plots. There was one that we praised very recently that I was trying to remember, but, you know, plots about war and what it does to people. And it was the reactions, wasn't it? Like, Jet's got it was last week. Jet had a completely different reaction to his situation than Katara and Sokka did. And the interesting element of that, and the notion of, there were parts of this episode that really highlighted, like, the notion of both tribes snuck food in because they assumed the other tribe would, so wanted to one-up it. Where if they just didn't assume that, neither of them would have done that. Or if they'd talked or you know what I mean? There were actually some really interesting ideas about people falling out, and, you know, countries that have conflict based purely on history and stuff like that. And none of that is explored further. And by making it a lie and a joke, you can't explore that further as well. Because there were points where, like, when the food thing was revealed, and when the fact that they both had different but reasonable interpretations of what might have happened, and the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, all of those ideas are really interesting, and you could do something really quite meaningful with them. You could, you know, you could potentially make someone think, actually, why are we not you know, countries or tribes or anything, but it could make someone go, why am I fool? It's been so long now, I don't even know what we're fighting about, you know, with that friend you've not spoken to or whatever. And, you know, with, you know, in a couple of years' time, when, you know, Nadia's like, what was the beginning of the fallout? I think it was Dan corking the entire kitchen. That's what happened. But in his, you know, she hears your side of the story and realizes you were having a bad day and corks the hell out of the kitchen, you know? And that was just something that happened. But yeah, the undercutting of it means that you can't think that way. And it's a shame, because it didn't even need to do that for me. It just needed to stick to the joke, and that would have been enough. But there are definitely, the ingredients are absolutely there for this episode to have been stronger than it is.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about that is that I can sort of see what happened. because it seems like, and anyone can correct me if I'm wrong here, but what it feels like the writers were doing here was they wrote the episode as it was, and then they went, oh, but it's a lot of coincidences. Aang keeps having like all these stories from 100 years ago that are relevant to the shit they're coming across today. It's a bit convenient that he happens to know what exactly happened here. Let's make it a lie, so it sort of justifies that. But I think that's fine. Like, no one... Yeah, it's not a problem that Aang was around a lot. You know what I mean? It's not... No. I don't hate the idea that he travelled a bunch. Like, no. And also, like, the minute they say anything was 100 years ago, I automatically assume Aang was present for it.
Yeah, when they said that, I was like, oh, it's going to be connected to Aang then, because why else would it be 100 years?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it sounds like a nice round number, so I could imagine some people just let that go over their head. But yeah, as soon as they say 100 years in this show, I'm immediately like, so when Aang was a child then? Although I do like the line, I must admit, I do like the line when he says, I may not look it, but I'm actually 112.
Yeah, that was funny.
That's not a bad line. Yeah, so I think overall, for me, this is probably my least favourite episode of the show, full stop. There are a couple of other ones that people don't like, but I think they're more defendable than this. I think this is the most flawed episode. But it isn't without its merits. It's just that its demerits hinder it greatly. Like, the things working against this episode way stronger than the stuff for other episodes.
Yeah, do you
know
think
what I mean? Like that ratio is much higher in other episodes in terms of towards quality.
Do you think I've for some reason almost unfairly latched on to the flashback animations of this episode for some reason? Or do you think actually
No, I think
what's your view on that? Am I over crediting that? Or are you sat there like they did that in episode 6, you just didn't fucking notice? Like what?
No, I think that you've made some really valid points. You've actually you brought me more from like a really negative place to like a this episode has merit but not enough to overcome its problems, which is a different position from what is this shit I just sat through. Because you're right, that soccer stuff that you pointed out is really good. That animation is really creative. Like, they took the opportunity. They're like, well, if we're going to do like little flashbacks, they don't have to be in any sort of style. They don't have to look like anything. They can just be what people are imagining in their heads. So let's go nuts. And what they do with the styles as well is they differ them so that there's a kind of chaotic sort of grittiness to the Zhang's version of events, and there's a very clean, clear cut version from the Ganjins when they do their version of it. That sort of and both visuals actually kind of represent the styles that sort of speak to the characters of those two tribes. So I think both points are are really valid. They're really salient, and I think they do go some way to bringing me back from the edge of just like, please flush this episode down a toilet or cover it in cork. I will to be an appropriate punishment for this episode.
I would love a YouTube series of you just corking things that didn't need to be corked. That would make me laugh so much.
But just out in the world, like Borat style, like just pulling people over to be like, oh, I've just got to do something with your car, and then just like corking their wheels and stuff.
What do I do? I'm
corking all my plants after this. I'm going to put some cork in a cup of tea, see how that tastes.
No, it's not going to taste well. Is it definitely called cork? It must be. You've searched it and bought it, but...
Well, it says in giant letters on the thing, cork.
So that means cork is both, the sort of material, a place in Ireland, and something that you use...
Well, no, cork, that's with an O. This is spelled... It's pronounced cork, but it's written C-H-A-L-K.
Oh, C-H-A-L-K. What? So it's hold on. So it's spelt like chalk, but it's.
Oh wait, no. Maybe I'm spelling it wrong. 1 second. No, it's not. Sorry, it's C-A-U-L-K.
Right. Yeah, I've just googled it. Right.
C-A-U-L-K. It's pronounced cork, but it's it's written differently. It's spelled differently.
Makes more sense.
There you go. Sealant gun, corking gun, cork gun. There you go. Oh, I can buy them from Screwfix, Chris.
We've already... You've got the gun, though, haven't you?
No, I was just because I googled it. It's now telling me where I can buy it. I'd rather
hold on. I thought you said earlier that you had the gun. You said the cork and the gun were waiting, was sat in the cupboard or something.
Yeah, I did. That's correct. I've just googled it now to check how it's spelled, and now it's advertising it to me.
Oh, well, you don't need another one, mate. That's not going to solve your problems. You just need to do it properly.
I know, but then I clicked it as a joke, and now you've put me up. I tell you what, though, mate, I'm not going to get it from Screwfix. If I was going to get it from anywhere, I'd get it from Selco. It's where the trade go.
I don't want to...
We are not sponsored by either Screwfix or Selco, and I tell you what, they'd be stupid to sponsor me. The job I've done. Unless the ad campaign was, don't be a Dan, get it from Screwfix.
We could suggest it, see if that's sponsor.
Me doing all sorts of like DIY badly.
Without
and then being like, don't be like this, dickhead. Get your kit from somewhere good.
Without discussing it again, because we have gone over it, I will re-emphasize again. I don't personally think it not being consequential is the problem with this episode. I
agree with that. I 100% agree with that.
And it's very. I mean, it's 5 minutes before the plot is even clear. Or I think it might be because I remember visibly looking. They get stuck in the cave after about 7 minutes. And I'm like, wow, there's still quite a bit of this to... Like, do you know what I mean? It just feels a bit slow at the beginning. And yeah, I get why this isn't a popular episode. For me, if they had have... Ideally, they'd have explored the kind of when people fall out element of it. But even without that, just keeping the joke and not undermining it would have been enough. Yeah. I feel really bad because I feel like we spent 7 minutes talking about... I moaned at Steve Avatar. I'm like, it was 7 minutes before they got stuck in the cave. People listening to this are like, yeah, we had 7 minutes of cork talk before you two even started analysing the episode. So chill out, mate.
Right. But I tell you what, you deserve a round of applause for Cork Talk. Coming soon to Nothing But Static Cork Talk with Chris and Dan.
Hey, we still got to do nothing But Claps coming soon to Patreon.
Oh dear.
But hopefully it'll be up by the time you're listening to this. I'd like to do that before the end of the year. But
maybe that can be our Christmas special.
I will put it on the main feed.
Fuck it. What? Like, Chris, I'm a man having a breakdown. Honestly, now is the time to get me to agree to stupid shit like that because I don't care about anything. The cork in my kitchen right now is drying in like places that it should not be drying. So this is reckless abandon time. This is a man on the edge. This is somebody who does not care.
Well, I'm up for nothing but claps at Christmas, but that doesn't mean I want to do it instead of. I still also want to do my favourite episode of the year, which you hate. Which for listeners that don't listen to Nothing But Slapping, please feel free to check it out. Every year, I do a unnecessarily detailed breakdown of the Christmas TV that's on in the UK over Christmas, and every year it takes ages. I talk about shit that no one's going to watch, including us.
It's insane. The stuff he finds that's actually on television, it's amazing. But I do kind of like it because it's the one episode of the year Chris does all the research for. So it's actually, for me, it's like a little Christmas gift. Gets a little break.
So much research. For anyone thinking, yeah, but Dan does all the editing, I almost do the equivalent based on just Christmas telly research.
I'm not sure that's true, but
no, that's definitely not true. That's definitely not true.
The equivalent for maybe for 2 or 3 episodes, but the number we put up across the year, I think not.
No, definitely not. I feel bad for moving us on to Triv, but I don't think there's too much more to say.
I wrote a couple of things down that I just thought were worth mentioning. Just, little notes. One of my notes, Chris, and this is true. I wrote the words, "those fucking tarps," because I just didn't want to hear them moaning about it anymore.
Yeah, that's fair.
I was ang in that situation. I was just like, I don't care what you do with your tarps, and you guys shouldn't care either. It does not matter if Sokka wants to sleep on it instead of using it for rain. If it rains, more fool him. If it doesn't, then he's a victor. Who gives a shit?
Does that go on for that long?
Katara.
I feel like your description of it went on longer than the scene actually takes place.
Well, no, because it comes back 2 times. It comes back multiple times throughout the episode.
Didn't you think there was something quite sweet about Katara's joy that the tribe she went with does put down tarp?
No.
Cool. What else you got?
Yeah, so I wrote down those fucking tarps. I also didn't like them splitting them up. That felt like a teacher who didn't know what to do with 2 naughty kids, so instead of dealing with it, they just sent them to different corners of the room. That's not bad. Aang's not good at this. And I also didn't like Aang not hanging out with anyone, because he was sat up there saying things like, sure would be nice to be around a campfire right now, but of course the plot won't allow it because I need to be shocked and annoyed at everyone having food later.
Yeah, I did think, like, I did think at the time, like, what does he not want to pick a side? Neither side has particularly indicated that they'll be annoyed if he hangs out
If he
with
joins
them more
them.
than the other.
Yeah.
Like, I did think that.
If
was
anything,
weird.
this is the two groups we've come across so far that are the least fucked about whether they hang out with the Avatar or not. Like, they couldn't give two shits.
Also, while we're nitpicking, let's talk about weight distribution on. Have you got that written down?
Weight distribution?
Yeah, on Appa. Like, he could have fit way more people on there, couldn't he?
Right. Yeah, I think they're a bit vague with Appa, but the impression we've gotten in the past is that the more weight that is on him, the less distance he may travel. So I don't know where that threshold is, but at a certain point he gets very tired if there are too many people on him.
But he took a load of people, but then he's... Oh no, is he with Aang at the scene where he's... No, it's Momo he's with, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's Momo because Momo's catching flies and stuff. Okay, fine.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just looking at Appa going, come on, put a bit of effort in, mate. You could take a few more people than that.
Yeah, he probably could have.
And you'd think he or the people that he took would then send him back when the others didn't appear. But
yeah, also a good point. I mean, while we're in nitpick corner, I mean, the food thing at the end where so Aang's like, do what I do, and then he jumps on the dangerous murderous spider thing and puts the bag over its mouth. If I was with someone, we'd be chased by us and he says, do this, and then he did that, I'd be like, fuck no. Like, what are you talking about? That seems insane.
For people that have been frightened and attacked by these monsters, they all got really on board with jumping on top of them, and the monsters just seem to accept it pretty easily as well.
Yeah.
It is a bit clunky how they get out of that situation, and it's
also clunky why they can't get out in the first place. So the earthbender's like, right, arms are done, can't do no earthbending, but literally the guy in the intro does earthbending without moving his without doing anything particularly fancy with his arms. So I don't really.
I was like, with some basic restructuring, you could make this pathway not need an earthbender to take people through it as well. Because most of the stuff he was doing, like when he formed the bridge, I'm like, well, could you not just always form the bridge?
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Why do you have to keep making it? Do you put it back so you're... That's his racket, Chris. That's his whole scam.
Yeah.
He goes across the divide, makes the bridge in front of everyone. Look how necessary I am. You couldn't have gotten across this without me. Gets them to the end. Oh no, actually, because you wouldn't be able to get up at the other end without him. If he'd have been there. Oh yeah, so if he'd have done that once, theoretically there'd then be a path through. But then what he must do is go back and undo it so that he can continue taking tours across. It's a scam. I thought splitting them up was just a dumb idea in general. I'm trying to think of what my other notes are. I think that's everything.
Any triv?
There is some triv. I'm just making sure I haven't missed anything else, but I guess if I have, who cares? I weirdly wrote down a summary of my thoughts. Would you like to hear Dan's final thoughts?
Yeah.
Because I wrote this, apparently. I don't remember doing this, but a lot of people
cite
this episode...
when the body is found covered in cork in a couple of days' time, it'll be good to have on record something that reflects your mental state. So
yes. Yeah, so no, there's nothing weird about this. It's just I just for some reason decided to sum up my thought, which I never do in my notes normally. I usually let it happen sort of ad hoc. So this might echo some things we've already said. A lot of people cite this episode's issues as being related to being inconsequential. That doesn't help, but it's deeper than that. Writing feels less sharp, almost no good jokes in the episode, lots of clunky character work, weird pacing, there isn't much action, and what there is fairly lame. And it ends with Aang lying to solve the problem, which is just not a good message. So there you go.
Wow, was that your summary, or was that on the notes from Avatar thing that the people sometimes provided?
Well, it's funny you should say that, Chris.
Yeah,
because there's an episode later on that briefly references this, very briefly, and in the Avatar's extras for that episode. It says, this is a reference to an episode called The Great Divide. And then it pops up, and then the next bubble pops up with, this episode was not a fan favourite.
Wow.
So it's the lowest rated episode on IMDb. And that is why they were so clearly that the creators knew about it. But it's considered to be the least popular episode amongst fans, according to some of the like various trivs and stuff I've found. So yeah, it's a pretty bad one. Its original title on that old Nick website was Bitter Work. I don't understand why all these episodes seem to have had different titles so far, but there you go. Unless those are just like wrong titles or something. I don't know.
I also don't really understand bitter work. Why is he bitter about having to be the voice of reason all the time?
Yeah, I guess so.
It's not a great
Or
title,
all the people are all bitter at each other, but they've got to work together.
Well, maybe. Yeah.
Either way, this title's better. It's not. In the real world, the Great Divide most commonly refers to the Atlantic-Pacific Continental Divide, a mountainous ridge that separates the watersheds that drain into the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. The Great Divide in the world of Avatar is almost the exact opposite. A canyon analogous to the real-world Grand Canyon, where the canyon is created by the Earth rising sort of up around. So there you go.
It's also a fantastic song on Hanson's 4th studio album, The Walk. There's a song called Great Divide. You thought the Doctor Who reference was deep cut. Get ready. It's a great song.
And I thought I was the one having a breakdown.
Well, not a breaking down, a constant love of Hanson. That's not
the sign. The signs are there. Red flags are there. One other point I actually did on in my notes that I wanted to talk about was the glider, which is just magically repaired this week. Okay, fine, they got it repaired between the episodes. And one thing I wanted to point out that I did like is he didn't pull it out of his ass at any point in this episode. It was in his hand the whole time like a walking stick, and then when he used it at the end, I was like, well, that's fine. He had it on him all episode.
There you go. Something the episode did right. Aang didn't pull the glider from his ass.
Yeah, that weird, like, magic pocket he's got somewhere in his robes that you could pull that fucking glider out from. And I had a think, Chris, and I have a suggestion for the Knobhead Hall of Fame.
Really? You're desperate to get someone else in this Hall of Fame. Who are you thinking?
Aang, for lying.
No, we can't.
The other option I had was fucking everyone.
He was lying with good intentions.
Because they're all
I won't
dickheads.
allow it. Was it Soccer or someone else that did the joke of he's coming to get me, he's got me? What was that joke? That made me laugh a little bit. Wasn't there a joke where like someone, it might have been Soccer, decided to chase the monster and then the monster rounded on them?
I'm drawing a blank on that one.
Am I just making scenes up? I'm sure
no, it probably happens, but it's probably such a small moment. I just didn't like.
Yeah.
It didn't set into my sort of like.
Yeah.
My memory. If I don't make a note about it, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, I'm sure there was a gag about someone getting chased that was all right.
But there was a lot of iffy gags in this episode. It didn't get a genuine laugh out of me until right towards the end. I don't think.
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, right there you go. It's I mean, it's weird because it's October for us, but it's October 2020 for us, but it's 2021 for everyone else. But for those of you who've recently experienced New Year, listening to this, thank you. But not the patrons. Patrons are so deep into 2021 now that 2020 is old news. But for the people listening to this on like YouTube and iTunes and all those places, it's probably just recently been New Year's. So happy New Year. But I think, unless you've got anything you want to add about the episode, Chris, I'm happy that we've covered it.
Yeah, no, so am I. I think we got across all the points. Give me we got a minute. Give me a tease for the next episode, Dan.
The next episode is The Storm. What can I tease about The Storm?
I thought you were going to go, the next episode is better. And I'm like, well, I'm assuming that.
Yeah, the next episode is better. It's... what can I say? No, that would be a spoiler, actually. No, I'll hold back on that. Frogs? Yeah, or maybe the frogs are more relevant to the episode after. They're a little bit linked, these next two, you see.
Okay, frogs. Cool. Good hint. I'll take it.
Actually, no, I think they are more related to the episode directly after. So let me redo that with the past.
Okay, cool. Well, give us an update next week as well about whether you managed to scrape off all the cork.
It's somewhere.
And
it's in many places it should not be. And also, the worst part of it all is, like, the actual place it needed to be, it just doesn't look very neat at all. It's a bit of a mess. So
yeah, but you tried.
I'm dreading finishing this and going in there and seeing it again, because I haven't looked at it since we started recording, obviously. And like, I fear it might be actually worse than I'm imagining in my head now.
Yeah, or it might be better than you're imagining.
Yeah, well, right. I mean, yeah. It's the breakdown of a human man. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. I'll be fine next week. It's all right. We're going to talk about the storm, Chris, and it's going to be good.
Yeah, man. It'll be great.
And I'll be more capable of thinking up a tease for the episode following it. Or I'll just use the frogs one again, if that's still relevant. Trying to remember which bits of these extra episodes appear in which one. So yeah, I suppose the real tease there is that the next 2 episodes are kind of linked.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That's exciting.
So you can get us in all the usual places. Instagram. No, not Instagram. Instagram's for Raphodraws. You can do that though. Go check out Raphodraws. Instagram.com/Raphodraws. You can also get like his Tumblr, Twitter, and YouTube links from launchlinks.io/u/Raphodraws. You can get like cups and T-shirts and all the stuff with the artwork that's for this podcast on, without the logo, obviously, just the actual picture of the gang. Sunset. It's really cool. 10 points, a thumbs up to Rapho, and a very big thank you for letting us use that piece of art.
Absolutely.
You can get us though in all the other places that you'd normally want to get us. So Twitter, nothing but static UK. And I'm at Dan Doolan. Chris is at C Billingham. We're youtube.com/nothingbutstatic UK, patreon.com/nothingbutstatic. I think that's all of it. We have a main podcast called Nothing But Static where we do TV content, just general TV content. There's like 200 odd episodes of that now. Plenty to go through. If you're enjoying this, you can always go check out our other podcast, Steven University, which is very similar to this. It's pretty much the closest thing we do to this other than this. Although you can't compare this to itself, because that doesn't make any sense. Again, this is a man having a breakdown. I need to stop talking. Thank you for listening. I've been Dan Doolan.
I've been Chris Billingham.
And we'll see you in a week's time when we discuss The Storm.
I was corking.
Oh, you're a bad person. Yeah. What was it? Cork Talk? What was it? Is that the name of the pod? Cork Talk with Chris and Dan.
Cool. Nice.